Shigeru Miyamoto's metaphorical quote, "I think that inside every adult is the heart of a child. We just gradually convince ourselves that we must act more like adults," is embodied in his magnum opus, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which, while separated by distinct historical contexts and literary errors, is a manifestation of J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, paralleling it in its exploration of nostalgia for carefree youth and responsibility of adulthood. In Ocarina of Time, we're invited to see the transition from childhood to adulthood as a profoundly transformative, bittersweet experience, as throughout the game, the whimsical innocence of youth is impelled to adult responsibility. Arguably, Miyamoto's intention was to echo concepts from Peter Pan to reflect the cultural climate of 1990s Japan, and in doing so, offering a nuanced perspective on the grief of growing up. The unforgiving dichotomy between carefree childhood and the responsibility of adulthood is encapsulated in Peter Pan and Ocarina of Time by imposing adulthood upon their protagonists. Barrie highlights this sentiment by presenting the characters of Peter, a boy who refuses the predetermined transition from childhood, Captain Hook, a symbol of adulthood's responsibilities and fears, and Wendy, whose journey reflects the complexity of navigating between these two opposing forces. Peter's characterization reflects a society on the brink of losing its innocence. The aphorism, "Neverland isn't a place, it's a state of mind," highlights that as tensions rose in Europe, Neverland offered cultural escapism from the looming World War, and that Peter's refusal to grow up mirrored a broader reluctance to face the realities of adulthood and an idealism of youth, ironic amidst the grim prevalence of child labour in the Edwardian era. Alternatively, Captain Hook, who's at constant war with Peter, is perpetually pursued by a crocodile that swallowed a ticking clock. However, someday the clock will run out and then he'll get you, symbolising the inevitability of death, a fear that develops with adulthood. This starkly contrasts Peter, who in the face of the afterlife proudly declares, "To die will be an awfully big adventure," a paradoxical yet charmingly whimsical revelation that presents his worldview as naive but courageous nonetheless. This internal conflict is further embodied through Wendy, who's characterised as every inch woman, though there were not many inches, symbolising her being pushed to the brink of adulthood prematurely by her father, Mr. Darling. The metaphor, Neverland is only a map of the child's mind, combined with the implication that Peter is a manifestation of Wendy's youth as he was her size in both body and mind, and the stage directions from the original theatre production that Mr. Darling and Captain Hook should be played by the same actor, suggests that the conflict between Peter and Hook symbolises the internal struggle between childhood and adulthood within Wendy herself. Ultimately, Wendy realises that to blossom into adulthood, she must leave her youth behind while still choosing to cherish it, keeping the memory of Peter and Neverland alive. Miyamoto depicts Link's transition from childhood to adult as marked by trauma, personal sacrifice, and a profound loss of innocence, reflecting the cultural climate of 1990s Japan, where adulthood brought heavy expectation and duty. Link's home, Kokiri Forest, is an allusion to Netherland as it is not accessible by adults and symbolises carefree youth. However, Link is suddenly entangled into a sacred quest, forcing him to prematurely enter a world of adult responsibility, highlighted by the dialogue, "From now on, the future of all the people in Hyrule is on your shoulders." Inspired by Miyamoto's childhood love for exploring rural Japan, the first act of the game largely serves to show Link and the player what a healthy, whimsical Hyrule should look like, in order to juxtapose it from what it will inevitably become. When Link awakens in an adult body after being sent into the future, Miyamoto employs pathetic fallacy in the once whimsical Hyrule by utilising a dull colour palette and low-key lighting to present it as bleak and overrun by the undead, symbolising Link's internal struggle with adult responsibility and the trauma of growing up in a world that no longer feels safe or familiar. This impact is profoundly magnified by Ocarina of Time's interactive nature as a video game. Unlike passive mediums, the player directly embodies Link, actively navigating the transformation of Hyrule and personally experiencing its corruption. This contrast reflects that of the typical 90s Japanese child's carefree life, compared to the country's grueling work culture, which emphasises duty over personal well-being, especially so during Japan's lost decade, a time of extreme economic pressure. However, the metaphor, "Time passes, like a river's flow it never ends, a childish mind will turn to noble ambition, the water's clear surface reflects growth," suggests that this arduous process of maturation is ultimately necessary to grow into adulthood. Like Wendy before him, Link becomes a vessel for exploring the emotional cost of growing up when one is not ready, linking both texts through their tragic portrayals of youth forced into maturity. Nostalgia encapsulates the cruel irony that we only realise we're in the best years of our lives once they've already passed, a bittersweet truth highlighting our inability to fully grasp present happiness. At the age of 13, J.M. Barrie's eldest brother David died in an ice skating accident, an event that deeply affected Barrie. The metaphorical dialogue, "I'm youth, I'm joy, I'm a little bird that's broken out of the egg," spoken by Peter suggests that Barry saw his character not just as an embodiment of internal youth, but as a symbolic rebirth of his brother, a deeply personal and nostalgic creation, an attempt to reclaim a part of his own stolen childhood. This ache for what is lost echoes in the hyperbole. Henceforth, Wendy knew that she must grow up. You always know after you're two. Two is the beginning of the end, shifting to a melancholic tone and capturing the creeping existential awareness of time's unstopping march, which, as highlighted through Hook, only becomes greater with age. When Wendy becomes an adult, she often finds herself engaged in nostalgia when recounting tales of Neverland to her daughter. However, she can never truly visit Neverland again, as she has shed the gay and innocent and heartless nature that Barry ties to childhood. With this, Neverland becomes a metaphor for nostalgia, whimsy laced with sorrow, a recognition that the joy of childhood is fully appreciated only in hindsight. As critic George Bernard Shaw noted, Peter Pan is ostensibly a holiday entertainment for children, but really a play for grown-up people. A meta-narrative highlighting that the story resonates most powerfully with those already grieving for what Peter fights to preserve, a reflection of our desire to hold on to the moments that time inevitably steals. Youthful idealism and the bittersweet acknowledgement of time's passage is similarly explored in Ocarina of Time through Miyamoto's deep nostalgic connection to Shintoism and its core tenets of balance, nature, and music. The game's title screen immediately subverts expectations with a melancholic, intertextual reference to a melody from the original Legend of Zelda game, deliberately evoking a wistful, contemplative tone and a sense of nostalgia for veteran players, rather than the epic main theme typically expected from a fantasy adventure. The Shinto practice of Kagura involves the use of music to speak to nature spirits, a ritual that's alluded to in Zelda through the titular Ocarina of Time and its songs that talk with the spirits, allowing them to transform the environment around Link. As players must play the notes of the melodies themselves, an intimate connection is established to the game's legendary soundtrack, not just as background music, but as a result of bringing balance to the environment, another allusion to Shinto. Link's role as a self-insert character further enhances the player's emotional investment, allowing them to project themselves into his journey. This balance is further explored as Miyamoto highlights nostalgia's tendency to create a rose-tinted version of childhood through the bottom of the well, a location that can only be accessed by Link after he's travelled back in time to his childhood. The chilling parlance in the inscription, "Here is gathered Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred," adds to the sinister tone created by the grotesque creatures and imagery that the player must confront in the well, revealing that even the Hyrule of Link's youth always harboured darkness, unseen by his naive eyes. It is only when Link acquires the lens of truth, symbolic of his maturity, that he can finally escape the well. Ultimately, through their explorations of memory and transformation, Ocarina of Time and Peter Pan show that balance between idealized pasts and present realities is vital when indulging in nostalgia. While it's essential to cherish the memories of childhood, true maturity lies in accepting that the past, in its pure form, is something that we must leave behind in order to fully embrace our adult selves. Barry's Peter Pan manifests itself through Miyamoto's Ocarina of Time in both its concepts and meta-narrative. By presenting protagonists thrust into maturity before their time, both works underscore an understanding that while grief for lost innocence can be profound, true growth lies in embracing maturity and responsibility, while still cherishing the child's heart that beats within all of us.